Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Buff Nagel the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Buff Nickel the podcast, where we continue to talk about all things good in the pursuit of the adventure of life. I am not Zach. I am his older brother, better looking brother, Harry, and I am joined by Rafe. And we're excited to have an additional big brain smart head on the podcast today. Rafe, you want to go ahead and do some introductions?
Yeah, well, I will in just one second, Harry. I want to do a couple things that we always have to do, and because these are fundamentally important. The first thing is to thank all the listeners. Without you guys, there's no reason for us being here. So thank you for joining in, and we hope we're not wasting your time. Thanks to you guys, Buff Nagel, the podcast is recognized as a global top 10% podcast. As usual, if you want to reach us, talk to us at buffnagel@buffnagel.com. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, yada, right? You know all the places. If there are podcasts there, you can find us. All right. And if you are new to our podcast, hey, welcome. Thanks for coming. We are glad that you're here. We're going to ask you to give us 4 episodes, and we will give you a reason to come back. We're talking about lots of different things, and surely there will be something that resonates with you. And remember, if you tell a friend to listen, you will get a free episode. All right. And if you're listening on one of those podcast machines on your phone, please leave us a 5-star review or hit subscribe, or all those things that they help us out back here on the back end to give you the content that you deserve. Harry, we do have a great guest today. Tell us about him.
Yes, so we are joined today by none other than my grandfather, your father, Parnell Donahue, Dr. Parnell Donahue. He's a rather good looking elder pediatrician, a classic family man who has raised all 3 of his sons, 1 daughter, and additional over a dozen grandchildren properly, I may say. A fantastic product of his upbringing and your upbringing. So without further ado, Par, how are you doing tonight?
Harry, I am just wonderful. I'm just like this day, gorgeous. And only thing I do question your vision a little bit about this good-looking grandfather you have.
That's right. You know what? If I can have a full head of hair at your age, I'll be very happy.
I am a little bit amazed by the full head of hair thing. I think, Harry, those go.
Hey, look at.
Well, yeah, I know. Yeah, he's got more than the 2 of us put together, Harry.
I think so.
He's 900 years old. All right, so you are in your life. You've been all sorts of things. You've been a dirt farmer, a pediatrician, a sports doc, a writer, a radio guy, and above all that, husband, father, grandfather, great grandfather. You've done all of those things. But it all started a long time ago in a little tiny town in southwestern Minnesota.
That's correct. I do want to correct you. You forgot that I have a column on the Epic Times.
All right. Thank you.
On parenting. Yes. But anyhow, I was born on the farm. We weren't in town. We didn't have any hospitals or anything around. We were all born on a farm, delivered by a doctor who came out to, I guess, help out, be there anyhow. And it was a little farm owned by my grandmother. And my father rented it on kind of what we called a crop sharing thing. Grandma got part of the crops. We got part of the crops. And I don't know how the expenses were handled, but they were. It was a good life. Had 2 older sisters, a brother, and 5 younger sisters. And at one time, we were all 11 living in one little house.
But no, this is a really small house, right? I mean, this is 11 people, ages, well, your parents, and then the kids covered what? How many years were
my older sister? I think is 24 years and 1 day older than my youngest sister.
And isn't your younger sister younger than some of her nieces and nephews?
That's correct. I have a niece and a nephew, both older than my younger sister, and they all 3 went to school together. They were in. I think that our nephew was in one grade, and then there was a space, and then the other two girls were in the same grade. But that they had a good time. They had a lot of fun. They're calling their Uncle Tom all the time, and his niece. They went together. They had a lot of fun. But that was after I was off the farm with that little house, probably about 1,000 square feet.
1,000 square feet, and this was on out on the prairie, and you
No,
guys
this house was in town. We
in
moved
town.
when I was in
Fancy.
college.
Fancy. They're
Towners.
moving up to the
Yeah,
town.
when I
That's
was
right.
in college, my folks freshman year, my folks moved, but I found out where, and I enjoyed them that summer.
This was a farming life in the what? You were born in 38, so this was you grew up during the Second World War,
Yep.
and you guys farmed what? Corn, wheat.
Well, we had corn and beans and flax and oats and pigs and chickens and cows and whatever else could be living on a farm.
And this was a big, like 30 acres, 100 acres, 2 acres,
Oh, I think that we farmed about 400 acres, more or less.
400 acres. Wow, well, that's a big piece of land.
But we raised everything, and I kind of never referred to farming as dirt farming, but that's really what it is. I did make one of my grandfathers kind of angry one time when I was about 13 years old, and I had just gotten done with my first job, which was really hard, I thought. And he said, "Well, what are you going to do when you grow up?" I said, "Well, I don't know, but I know I'm not going to be just a plain dirt farmer." Oof,
Oh yeah,
it was the wrong thing.
yeah.
He
That's not
explained to me, and he was right, that dirt farmers produce the food that feeds all of us. And they
absolutely right.
produce so much more than that. They're a big part of the economy, and I was really embarrassed after he got done talking to me. But that was interesting. We had a lot of fun times on the farm. One of the things I learned there was my dad had a lot of sheep. We sold wool in the springtime, and they had lambs, and we sold them in the summer. But once in a while, one of the ewes, that's a female mother sheep, would die and leave an orphan lamb. And usually we were able to give that lamb to another ewe who just had one, and she accepted it. But one year, two ewes died, and one had twins. So we had three little lambs
Three
and
orphan lambs.
three orphan lambs, and no one would take them. Now, I don't know why they wouldn't take them. They weren't ugly as far as I was concerned, but they wouldn't like them. So my dad brought him in the house, and this house was probably
wait.
Along with all seven sisters.
Yeah,
well.
so
I didn't have seven sisters that time. I just had one, two, three, four, I guess, and my brother. So, and our house at that time was way less than 500 feet. It was just tiny. And he brought him in the house. We didn't have any plumbing or running water, but he had a little cardboard box about 2 feet square, and they were in there. And then he went to
wait. So I'm trying to imagine this scenario. Is like so your mother is running the household, keeping everybody in line, and probably working out on the farm as well. All right, and your father comes in and brings. He says, "Well, Gert, we're going to keep the lambs. What in the family room? Is that
Oh, wait a minute. We weren't family. We didn't have fancy enough to have a family room.
family room? Right.
We had a kitchen, a living room, and two bedrooms. But the kitchen was relatively large. It was about a third of the house, and there was a box in the corner, and that's where the lambs were. Then he went to town and got 3 sheep nipples from the sheep store and put them on the end of syrup bottles. And us kids were assigned to keep those lambs alive by feeding them every hour or two during the daytime. And we loved it. The lambs loved it. They had wagging their tails and sucking that bottle. We had so much fun with them. So they grew up and got bigger. And about maybe 4 weeks or so, they started jumping out of the box, and spring was there. So we moved them from the house down into the corn crib. But they loved to come to the house. So when we'd open the crib door, they'd come running out there, and they'd be on the front porch. Well, that was fine. We had a dog who loved the lambs. His name was Shep, and he was able to reach up and open the door. Now, you have to remember, we didn't have any locks on the doors. They hadn't invented locks back then. And he could lean up and just take his paw and paw on that little knob until the door opened, and he'd go in.
All right. So the dog likes the sheep like the house, the dog knows how to open the door.
Yep.
All right.
Seems like a winning combination right there.
Yeah, this is what you need.
One Sunday when we went to church, it was a great thunderstorm, and thunder rang through the house. And we were in church; we didn't hear it at the house, but it was shaking all the windows whenever it thunder, and it scared the dog because he was afraid of thunder. So he opened up the door and came in the house and crawled under the bed. And the lambs, what do you think they did?
You know what? I'm going back
They
home.
followed the dog.
They all followed the dog, but they didn't get under the bed. They ran all over the house. And you know what sheep do when they're loose? They don't eat grass all the time, and they don't eat any furniture, but they do leave these little brown sheep nuggets all over the house. And we came home from church, and my mother was fit to be tied. And they were pretty big lambs by that time.
The house has got to just. I mean, so did you guys was it funny to you guys, or you're
We thought it was hilarious. We just roared. And we've told that story hundreds of times over the years, and she didn't laugh about that story until about when she was in her early 90s. I think she'd say, "Okay, it was funny." But I can laugh now, but I sure didn't laugh back then.
Now you come from speaking of your mother in her 90s, you come from some very from stock with very long with long longevity. Is that what I say? High longevity. Your
that's
parents both into their 90s. Yeah.
Well, then my mother died 1 month short of 99, and my dad died a few years earlier at the age of 96. My great grandpa Moriarty, for whom your middle name Harry, lived to be 97, and my dad was always going to live longer than Grandpa Moriarty, but he never made it.
Yeah. So you're there on the farm.
Yep.
You're chasing the sheep out on Sunday afternoons, and you decide you want to go to college. This was a thing that didn't happen often then.
Well, the college didn't occur to me quite at that point because I never thought of it. I was not a good student. I was screw around, didn't study, didn't read the books. I didn't do anything I was supposed to. And by the time I got to be high school junior, between junior and senior year, I got a job doing construction. They were building a new schoolhouse. And my job was to wheel these wheelbarrows full of concrete. Now, if you ever wheeled a full wheelbarrow full of dirt, you know it's not easy, especially if you're a skinny little 16-year-old. But when you fill it with concrete, if you just lean a little bit, the whole thing just tips over because it sloshes back and forth. And I dumped one of those wheelbarrows down into the hole and put it where it wasn't supposed to be. So then eventually during the summer, I got to drive the power wheelbarrow. And that was pretty fun, except they had two wheels and they went like heck. And I dumped one of them down in the ditch too. So then I got back to shovels and hand wheelbarrows. But that summer I got really exhausted, and I said, I'm not going to do this kind of work the rest of my life. I got to get my tail busy and study and learn what's going on in life. So I hadn't taken any of the courses required for college. So I went to see Coach Laurel, who was our school teacher. He taught all the sciences, all mathematics, coached all the sports, and did all the FIAD courses, PE back then. But I said, Coach, do you think that I could take algebra and physics at the same time? And he looked at me and he said, oh, sure, you could take them, but I'm telling you, they're going to take it. I don't know how something like that grabs you, but it grabbed me right by the tail. And I said, I'll show you, you little old coach. And I took senior year, took freshman algebra first period. I don't remember second period. Third period, I took advanced algebra. And then first period after lunch, I had physics. And I got through that year and got all my credits and I got into college. And I was a happy man. I was a happy man.
And that was at St. Mary's in Winona.
That's correct.
And then from there you turned that around, and at some point you said, I'm going to go be Dr. Man.
Oh, well, I made that decision when I was 5, actually. We had my grandpa Leonard had 2 sisters who were nuns, and they were stationed in Seattle, Washington. And one summer they came to visit their brother, my grandpa, and he and his my grandma brought them over to our house one afternoon. So we were all sitting there in the living room. Well, I wasn't sitting. We didn't have that many chairs. I was standing around, being in the way, about 5 years old. And one of the nuns asked me, well, she says, what are you going to do when you grow up? And I said, well, I'm going to be a doctor. And she says, oh, I'm so glad because I'm just need a doctor. My stomach's been hurting all afternoon. I don't know what to do. And I said, well, I'll get you some medicine. So I ran outside to this. We had a place in the woods, and it was our playhouse. And we had some boxes in there. And one of the boxes had an old empty whiskey bottle, the flax kind you put in your pocket, And I got that and put some water in there. And I came on there and said, here's some medicine, doctor. And my grandpa Leonard, his face fell off.
Right. So you're giving whiskey to the nuns, right?
Yep.
As a 5-year-old. As a 5-year-old.
As a
I
5-year-old.
I don't know any other 5-year-olds that run around with a flask in their back pocket.
Well, I was lucky I had one. But Grandpa was a teetotaler, and he thought everybody should be. But when I got the whiskey bottle out, I thought he was going to die. He didn't say anything. My mother didn't say anything. The sister, she all up, oh, thank you for this medicine. She took the cover off and she put that thing to her lips and she guzzled down some. I don't think she took any, but she pretended to. Put the cover back on and get me. Oh, she says, I feel better already. About 5 minutes later, I said, oh, my stomach ache is completely gone. So that sort of sealed it for me.
At five,
yeah.
All right. So, but you ended up going, right? So you were at.
Yes, I did. I went there, and thanks to Brother George, who was the director of the pre-med and pre-dental system programs there at the college, sent me a nice recommendation, and I got decent grades, and I got accepted to Marquette University College of Medicine.
And that's Medical College of Wisconsin now, right?
It is Medical College of Wisconsin now, yes. And I had a great, interesting ride out there because to get to Wisconsin, I didn't have a car, of course, but I took a train from Minnesota.
I was going to ask if you just walked uphill both ways.
In the snow.
Yeah. Considering it's the north in Minnesota, Wisconsin, I figured you'd walk in the snow uphill.
Oh yeah, both ways.
Right.
Both
Hot
ways.
potato in my hand. Yeah. I took the train, and the train went about halfway into Wisconsin, and then it turned and went to Minneapolis. And at the same time, a train came from Chicago. That was the one that was going to Minneapolis, and the other train went to Milwaukee. So I had to get off there in the middle of the plains. No buildings around except one little sort of like a pole with a cover on it, and it was Wyville, W-Y-V-I-L. So I went to Wyville and stood there for about a half hour. I thought the train's never going to come. I'm going to stay out here and die in the hot sun. But pretty soon it came and picked me up, and away I went to Milwaukee. It was a hot August day, like it only can be in Minnesota, over 100, I'm sure, and very humid. Got on the train, the air conditioner was broke. So opened the windows, and the hot air just came in. It got hotter and hotter.
So are there lots of people on this train? I mean,
it was not full of, as I remember, but it had a lot of people on it. It wasn't just me.
And this is, okay, so wait, so this is like 1960, right? Is it 60, 58?
We're 60, yeah.
60. All right, so are we looking at steam locomotives still, or have those phased out?
I think this was the diesel.
All right, so these were these electro diesels.
Yeah. So I went and stood on the back of the last car. I was in the last car, and they all have this back little veranda back there or something where that's where the presidents stand, where they come and give you talk in town. They stand back there.
Yeah, and if you're running to catch the train, you just jump onto that last step and
that's
then
right.
haul
That's
yourself
right.
up. Right.
You make it to get in there. Yep. And I didn't think anything of it. It was a little bit cooler. The breeze was blowing. And when I got to Milwaukee, my friend who was in dental school came and picked me up. And he looked at me and says, "Par, what happened to your face?" I said, "Well, what do you mean, what happened to my face?" It's a face I always
This is a face I've always had.
And he said, well, look at it. And he pulled the mirror on this car, and he said, I said, holy cow. I said, well, I was standing on the back of the train, and all the coal dust and soot from around there. So maybe it was a locomotive. I was just totally covered with soot. And before I could do anything else, I had to go to his frat house where he was staying and take a shower and go wash my clothes someplace.
So you're going to med school, and everything you own is probably what in a bag, right? In one suitcase.
I had two suitcases, and that's it.
That was it. And all so you didn't bring your stereo, you didn't bring your Xbox.
I didn't bring my stereo. I had to sing if I wanted to hear music.
Didn't bring your laptop, right?
No,
All right. So
left my
you would.
cell phone. Yep.
All right. So you go there and they teach you doctoring stuff.
They did, and while I was there, the January or February, I guess, of my freshman year, we were taking a course called physiology. And when I walked in to take the final exam, I looked in the back, and there was this pretty woman standing there with the test papers in her hand. And I said, "Phil," to my friend, "who's that girl?" And he said, "Well, I don't know, but I think she loves me." And I said, "No, no, no, Phil, she loves me." And he said, "I bet I can get a date with her faster than you can." I said, "No, never." So we were taking the test, and he was sitting here, and I was sitting over there, a couple of seats beside him. And all of a sudden, he was putting his papers together, and he was getting ready to go. And I thought, he's going to go up there and ask her out, and he's going to beat me out of this thing. And I just sat there, and one of the questions was the different layers of the skin. And I had a block on stratum corneum. I remember that well. So I just wrote stratum flaking off him, because that's what it means.
Right.
And I wrote down there, and I handed my paper in there, and when I got out of there, Phil was asking her out. And she turned him down, but I didn't know that. So I went to talk to her for a few minutes, and I asked her out, and said, "Oh, no, I'm busy Friday night." And I said, "Oh, crap."
Well, what about Saturday, right?
Well, so I waited till the next week, and I asked her out every week for about 6 weeks. And in the meantime, we would have coffee together in the morning, and we'd have lunch together in the afternoon in the cafeteria. Got to know her really well. Finally, she went out with me. And then 3 months later, we got married.
All right, and you saw the Braves there in Milwaukee. Is that
We
right?
saw the Braves in Milwaukee. Yes, we did. Yep. And we saw them move to Atlanta.
All right, wonderful. And she married you, and that's probably a good thing.
It was a very good thing. Best thing
Good
ever
thing
happened
for
to
the
me.
two of us, that's for sure.
Yeah, for all of us, isn't it?
Yeah, for all of you. Yes,
That became pretty important stuff. So, all right, so there's a lot of good that you've seen then. A lot of seeking of good, being of good, spreading of good. Is there anybody in your medical stuff that sticks out that was fundamentally important to building? I guess you're a grown up, and once you get out of med school and build up your grown up life.
Sure. Dr. Peterson was my chief pediatrics in medical school and during my residency. And he was a phenomenal clinician. He could come in there to a room and just look at this little baby and say, "Oh, she's got such and such." He'd be always right. But he was a horrid lecturer. He was just a horrible lecturer. And there's a sign in medicine that doctors poke on your stomach if they call it shifting dullness. And it's a sign that you have fluid in your abdomen. Well,
Wait. So like when the doc goes up and taps on your tummy,
yeah,
and listens to the sound, right?
yeah,
And if the sound, so you're saying dullness, like if it makes a dull sound but it moves, that's an indication that there's fluid, right?
and if you move over to the side, you can feel where the fluid has gone to. That's called shifting dullness. Nowadays, they just get a CAT scan. You can have to do that. But
all right, wait. So actually, so just so you know that when you're getting poked at by the doc, they're actually doing a thing, not just poking around.
yeah, he's not making music when he does this,
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you're looking for shifting dullness.
And he would lecture until everybody in the classroom was asleep. Then he would stand there quietly, just stand there. And I remember one day waking up and there he was standing. So I poked the guy next to me and he poked the guy next to him and the guy next to him. And pretty soon we were all awake. He'd start lecturing again.
Harry, that sounds like military briefs, isn't it?
Yeah, more or less, except you get yelled at as soon as you fall asleep.
But you said did you call him shifting dullness?
No, we didn't, not to his face, but the students all called him shifting dullness.
Oh, okay, all right.
And even the medical students at Madison, he would go over and lecture over there, they call him shifting dullness. It was pretty awful. But he taught me a lot. He was just a wonderful guy. I went to interview for my residency when I was in the Air Force, and we had a nice interview, and then he walked with me out to the car and shook his hand, said goodbye, grabbed the car handle, opened the door, and sat down in the back seat.
Nice. Good move.
And then he stood there.
Smooth.
And he looked at me. That's I'll never forget that. He gave me one of my greatest compliments, two of them, matter of fact. He said, I have worked for 2 years in pediatrics in the Air Force, and I didn't know much, but I knew he had a lot of questions. So I would ask him questions, and one day he said, he says, Dr. Donahue, no one's ever going to be able to answer all your questions. I thought, yeah, that's good. That's good. So my lesson is ask questions, because there's no foolish questions. I asked them already, and that's how you learn.
That's interesting, guys. Like I had not more than 6 hours ago today, one of the scientists that works for me at our company, he was like, "Can I ask you a really dumb question about my stats stuff?" And so I said, "Sure." So we had our little phone call, our conversation, and it turns out his really dumb question was a really brilliant question, and he was up against the wall with understanding his data, and he was at the limit of what his knowledge could be, because he studied, he studied biochemistry and all the other sciencey stuff, and I studied the stat stuff. But he was a little reluctant to come ask me the question. But man, that was it was a brilliant question, and it's going to turn around all sorts of analyses that he's doing and get us pointed in the right direction. So you did the medical school thing. You got out. You were in private practice for a while doing pediatrics, and then sports medicine, and then you started doing these other things. Right? You wrote some books. You do a radio show now. You do some parenting things. You write the article for Epoch Times. You have a podcast. How did we get there?
When I was in Hartford, Wisconsin, where I practiced there, there was nobody wanted to take care of the high school, be the team physician. So I decided to be team physician. So I had to learn something about sports and about sports medicine, and I took care of the kids for, I think, 13 years there as a team physician. And during that time, I wrote a book on sports medicine for high school kids, and it was the first sports medicine book for high school kids written. It was only the second sports medicine book written for lay people, not clinicians. Got quite a nice send off of that. And then I found a ad in the state medical journal looking for a doctor to do sports medicine injuries at a sports medicine clinic with 2 orthopedists. So I applied, and I gave them a copy of my book, and I got a phone call a couple of days later that I was hired. So I worked then for that place for almost 5 years. And when I took that, I was sad about leaving regular pediatrics, but I kept thinking, life is short. It's too short to do the same thing all your life. So if you get a chance to do something different, take it. Take that chance, because you'll love it. If it's something that you don't like, change something else. But never changed until you got a new job.
That's right. The bird in the hand thing, right?
That's bird in the hand. Yes.
All right. And then you went to Atlanta.
Yep.
Did some work down there, and now you're here in Nashville, and your most recent medical stuff, you've officially stopped that, but you were working at MEPS, right? The military entrance physicals
Military
stuff?
entrance processing station.
Okay. All right.
And
Well,
so
that's
everybody who goes to the military has to go through that station, unless you're going to the academy or ROTC. You have to go there for a physical. We did physicals on kids from the central Tennessee, from Louisiana, the northern part of Louisiana and Alabama, southern part of Indiana and Kentucky. And that's where I really learned about people.
So all those guys come to Nashville.
Yep.
And you guys would see them do their physicals, but it was more than just a physical, right? I mean, you had to check to make sure mentally they're stable and right.
Yeah, I learned so much from them. One of the boys, I take a second to tell you a story about him because I think it's so important. This guy was set 18, just turned 18, and it was in like about April, and he was going into the Army. And one of the questions we have to ask them is, did you ever live separate from your mom and dad? And he said, yeah, I did. I never knew who my dad was, but he lived with his mother off and on over the years. And every time she would go to jail, he would go to foster home. And he said the first time he went to foster home was when he was almost 4, and his mother's boyfriend raped him. Mm. And so he told his aunt then went to the judge and went to court, and the judge said, well, Mom, you have to choose your son or your boyfriend. And she said, well, I'll take my boyfriend. And he said, that was the first time and then I went to foster home. And he went on and told more and more stories about how he was abused by one of her serial live-in boyfriends. And finally, one morning, his junior year, he got a call from his uncle, who ran a sawmill in some state around here. And he said, you come and live with me. I'll give you, if you work in the mill. So he worked that summer in the mill, and then when fall came, he had arranged his schedule so he just had classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That way he could work 4 days a week and go finish school.
So this kid's going into the Army. He's been abused from when he's 4 till he's in high school, but he's straightening things out for himself, right? He's working hard. He's going to school, and by the time he's 17, 18 years old.
That's correct. He's a really great kid. And when he told his uncle he couldn't work Tuesdays and Thursdays, his uncle got really hacked at him and says, then get your butt out of here. Threw him out. But he said he had saved up enough money during that summer to buy an old junker car. So he lived in his car from then on until Christmas time. And he would take food from school on Fridays to feed him over the weekend. And he took care of his money. He eventually ran out of money at Christmas vacation because there was no school to give him the food. And he had no money by that time. And one morning he got out of his car and was walking downtown and fainted dead away on the street. And some ladies picked him up and called the ambulance, took him to the hospital, and they finally got a hold of his grandmother. And she said, well, you can live with us until school's out. But then you have to go to the Army. So he said, here I am. So I looked up and I said, Neil, how did you ever get through all that and turned out to be such a great kid? Look at you. Look at you. He said, well, I'm a committed Christian. I said, so am I. But what does that have to do with it? And he said, well, Jesus taught forgiveness. And I said, forgiveness? You were able to forgive those people?
His mother, the girl, the live-in boyfriends, the uncle that threw him out, all of those guys, all of them.
And he said, I had to. It was the only way I was going to get through this. He said, forgiveness is the basis of mankind.
Yeah, that is something we hear over and over and over again, is this need to forgive and to move on. And it's not saying that is that what was done was okay or right or good or even justified, but it really frees the forgiver, right? And I hear this every time I turn around from pastors when they're giving their sermons, is you got to forgive, and to me it is amazing to see somebody being able to get past that, and it freed him, right? Forgiveness will free you from the chains, from those chains.
Well, that's a story that I've told over and over again, and I've even told it to several priests, and they said, we'll use that story. Yeah. So then I had a call from the guy who was the president of WBOU, that's the Catholic radio station in Nashville, and he asked me to do a parenting show, and I did, and that's how that got started. And then I read the Epic Times, and about 6 months ago or so, they had a little thing. If you could give advice to the younger generation, what would you tell them? So I told them that story that I just told you, and I told them about 5 other stories of kids who made a big difference in the world. And I wrote and I said, now I'm not going to tell them what my advice, but I'm going to give the advice that I learned from their peers. And I gave them that. And I got a letter they published that letter, and I got a letter from the editors that would I be interested in writing a parenting
So now you're doing that, and you have your show though is on WBOU radio here in Nashville, but it's also in the podcast space, and it is the Parenting Matters website. Is that accurate?
It's the Parenting Matters podcast with
Okay.
Dr. Parr. There are about 5 other Parenting Matters podcasts.
Well, everybody loves that pun, right? I mean,
Yeah, but this is the Parenting Matters podcast.
all right.
And
So
if you just make a space and write with Dr. Parr, then
All right.
you usually find it. And it's on,
And-
Spotify and iHeart and whatever.
All right. Well, we will put links to that in the description here this week, so people can, as soon as they're done listening to the Buff, they can roll right over into Parenting Matters. Now, if Zach were with us tonight here, he would ask you a question that we end up asking our big brain smart heads. But since Zach's not here, Harry is going to do his best Zach impression and ask you a question.
That's right, Par. So usually we like to ask our guest hosts or big brain smart heads if there's any piece of advice or a little nugget of wisdom that you have for us, for our listeners, in order to help them seek and pursue the good in their own lives. What kind of advice do you have for us regarding that?
Well, you've heard it said hundreds of times that the future of our world lies in the hands of our children. But that's wrong. The future of the world lies not in the hands of our children, but in the hands of their parents, because your kids will become you. So my advice is be the person you want your kids to become.
I would definitely agree with that. Being a new parent, as all of our listeners should have listened to our podcast last week.
Yeah, so if you haven't, you'll hear a couple little stories from me and from Harry about his journey into parent land, and that goes with. That is so fundamentally important. We hear that all about the children, and it's oftentimes used as an excuse to just let the children do whatever they want to do. And I gotta agree with you. That's not going to get us where we need to go. I think if the kids do everything they want to do, we'll just have chocolate ice cream with rainbow sprinkles every day for the rest of our. Well, maybe that wouldn't be bad.
That's not bad.
But you're right. I see. You see the kids who've got it together, and they have the parents behind them. Sometimes the kids can make it out. The story you told was a young man that dug his way out of the gutter through just fortitude and forgiveness. But if you want to make the path easy for the kids, be the parent, be the person you want them to be, and they will model that. So it is time, and I think our powers that be will be kicking us out of the studio here in a second. So
I've definitely appreciated having you on and listening to your stories. Again, I'm sure I've heard some of them in years prior, but I think it's important to tell these stories to the rest of the world as well. But I want to thank our listeners for tuning in and listening to us. And we want to remind you all to seek the good, be the good, and spread the good, and enjoy the adventure of life.